Regular meeting of council, Town of Oliver, Monday, February 8th, 2021. Call this meeting to order. Are there any late items to add to the agenda?
Thank you, Your Worship. There is one late item. It's a proposed resolution for the SILGA.
Okay, thank you. I'll look for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended, including item J6.
So moved.
So moved.
Moved in second. Call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to adoption of prior minutes, adoption of January 25th, 2021, regular open council meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to adopt those minutes as circulated?
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion, question? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to item 2, adoption of January 26th, 2021 and February 1st, 2021 special open budget deliberation meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to adopt those minutes as circulated?
So moved.
Moved in second. Any discussion, questions? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Committee reports. First item, January 25th, 2021, Committee of the Whole meeting minutes for receipt. Can I get a motion to receive those minutes?
So moved.
So moved. Second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call a question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Item 2 is a verbal report from Chairperson Grace from the Committee of the Whole meeting that was earlier today.
Thank you, Your Worship. This afternoon we discussed under water matters damage to a pipe along Black Sage Road to a 30-inch ductile iron pipe that looked like it was accidentally turned off. This will be covered by insurance. We'll also be proving the pipe and looking at implementing processes and procedures so that this doesn't happen again. Council received the report for information. We reviewed community feedback as well as a staff report regarding alternative locations for the cold weather shelter. And this report was also received for information. We looked at zoning bylaw 1380, proposed housekeeping amendments, lots of suggestions and changes made by council, so that will come back to us at a future committee of the whole for further review. And that is the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson Grace. Moving to delegations, we have the RDOS budget presentation, and we have Mr. Jim Sofino, the RDOS Manager of Finance here. I'll pass this over to you, Jim, for your budget presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, Council, and staff, thank you very much for having me allowed to present the 2021 RDOS 5-year financial plan. This plan is at has been first reading and may change during the second and third and adoption. But at this point, this is where it's at, and we just want to discuss the tax implications, the budget structure, etc. So with that, I'd like to share my screen. As soon as I find the which one. Diane, I'm having trouble getting the screen. Can you do it? And I'll just work with what I've got.
Yes, I'll just pull it up. Just a moment.
Beautiful camping shot there.
Oh, thank you. It's not mine. We'll see what in the meantime, if I can change it. Can you see that?
Oh, I just got it.
Okay.
Okay, do you want to try again, Jim? Because I got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you see it?
There we go.
Okay. Well, finally. Okay, well, thank you for your patience. So with that, this is the beginning of the 2021 RDOS budget. So a lot of this hopefully isn't repeats, but just want to quickly discuss the budget structure. Your municipality, as well as many others, have 3 to 5 budgets, usually general water sewer, all being self-sustaining. The regional district at 2021 has 155 services. Each one is also self-sustaining, so there's 155 separate budgets. By doing that, it actually ensures that only those that get the benefit of the service will pay for the service. So how does the process work? It was an interesting year. I started this position September 28th of 2020, and the staff had a crunch time to prepare all the information that I needed. And in October, I started receiving the information which I put together. I then took it to the board. I did 3 separate workshops, November 22nd, 30th, 13th. Staff listened to what the requests were, what the changes were made accordingly. So with the different services that I just discussed, 155 different services, there's specific types, and each one is dictated by the type, who pays what. And in this case, for the regional services are services where the majority of municipalities participate. So as you can see, you've got emergency planning, heritage conservation, human resources, and this is a continuation of the services that are under regional services, and the majority of these that you would be taxed. The next type of service is rural. The rural service is exact opposite of the regional, where the majority of the services are paid for and used by the electoral areas. The electoral areas have services such as building inspections, bylaw, administration. Now, some things like building inspection and bylaw, you would have your own. So you would not see that under us. However, electoral areas do not have the capacity to have their own. So they go through us, and through using economies of scale, they would save money. So finally, the last 2 types of services are shared services and local services. Shared services are more for electoral areas. And a good example that I've been using is the fire department for Keremeos. That's a shared fire service between Keremeos area B and G. Using fire services again for local services, there's other fire departments that aren't shared, like Anacus Mountain, where they only protect the specific area of electoral area A. So only those that benefit from the service pay for the service. So continue on with the process as the budget was brought up to date. There was a first reading on January 21st, 2021, and by law, it must pass and adopt by March 31st, 2021. Something I thought you might find interesting, and some new information that you may or may not use. For property assessment, it's ongoing. Your area was 4.91% of the total assessment for the regional district, up slightly from 4.84. The assessment, so your assessments went up 3.02, but there's also a non-market change of 0.66 that's included in the 3.02. The non-market change, it would be the new houses, construction, businesses, etc., that are in this tax year, but were not in the last tax year. So your taxes went to 3.02, which is above average for the total regional district. So you're going to be bearing slightly more of the costs just because of the assessments increase. So what is new? One of the newest things that the board changed. And one of the things that the board asked me when I first started is to look at the administrative overhead costs that's charged to the 155 services. The 2021 did not meet the needs of the organization. They, in some cases where one service could have very minimal service, was charged an exorbitant amount. A good example is, I'll give you right now, is SIR. SIR last year was charged $74,500 for admin fee. The year before it was $11,000. We write 2-3 checks a year on that, and I did some homework, and we spent about $11,000 a year working on that, and plus the whatever extra admin that we would have. So it was a formula that perfect. The board recognized that it needed to look at. I looked at it as they requested. I started with a philosophy, and I told the board, this is the philosophy that I'd be looking at. I wasn't looking at what's the cheapest way where one organization would save over another. I wanted to be fair. And in doing so, I recommended that 20% of each year's calculated admin fee be transferred over to capital. And that capital would be charged back on a tier basis. And the board agreed to that. I also recommended, and the board agreed, that a 4th tier in the operational section be adopted, with that 4th tier being classified as contracts. So anything where there's minimal fee, and essentially we're just doing a small service for and helping provide them to meet their needs, we're not charging an absorbent amount. And with this, the electoral areas agreed also, along with municipal members. A lot of the administrative fee was transferred to the electoral areas, and the municipal members benefited from this. And in some of the cases, one reasons why your tax requisitions aren't as high as last year is directly because of the admin fee policy. So what else is new? What's usually new is every year the board is asked, just as you are as a municipality, for grants. Also, service level requests are also new to this budget, and then capital. So we'll start off with the regional grants. So this slide just talks about the service level requests. I'm not going to read it. So this is the slide which shows the authorized and request for the aid, the grant and aids. So as you can see, 25,000 was authorized, 63,000 was requested. Last year it was 40,000 was authorized. These are the service level requests. So as far as the service level requests are concerned, only those areas that benefit from the service level requests pay. And in this case here, there was a 0.65 FTE. And as you can see, a lot of it is for recreation, landfill, campgrounds, etc. This is a 1 FTE, and it's a project manager. The costs here, again, are specific to the use where they are going to be used. Program change. This one here was essentially for mosquito control, water for Falders, Sage Mesa, etc. This one here was tested. It was the mosquito program increased dramatically, looking at how it was being charged. You'll see that $18,000 directly going to the mosquito control program. The board will see at second reading that everything underneath the mosquito control from 3558 down to the bottom will be now taken off just because of the extra costs that were incurred. The board at the first reading voted to contribute 50% of the reserves to offset the expenses for 2021. And then that's about $42,000. So the tax requisition that you see here under your mosquito control will be lowered materially at second reading. What else is here? These are FTE requests, specifically one's for the Smokeamine Recreation, the other is for the Oliver landfill. Again, they pay the brunt of these costs. And I thought maybe instead of showing you capital that it's not really in your area, I'll show you the capital that benefits the town of Oliver. And essentially, at one point, you would have had to pay in. These are all financed either through the reserves or for grants. So, but at one point in the past, the money had to be accumulated, and I just thought you'd be interested in where the money was going. And here's the last three. There's quite a few in this area here. So with that, I did a summary of the budget, changed it a little bit around where you'll see the 58 million in 2020, but in the 51 where it's called RDOS expenses, it includes the capital, where mine, it doesn't. The capital project are split up into two sections. One section is capital project, which is going to happen for sure. And that's 9.2 million funded either from gas tax, grants, or reserves. And the other one is the capital project contingent on grants. So that's the hopeful. If we've got the grant applications out there, but until we see it in paper that we've got it, it is contingent. And there's not going to be any work done until that point is concluded. One of the things that I just want to quickly discuss at this point is I talked to the board, and upon the board's permission for the 2022 budget, the RDOS budget is going to be split into an operating budget and a capital budget, so that you'll see a flat line. And right now, it's very hard to compare the budgets for the regional district because it includes capital. But once we take out the capital, you'll be able to compare and have a baseline and see if there's a dramatic increase or not. Right now, it looks, a service may look like it has a dramatic increase, but that's because it has maybe a $1 million capital project in it. So with the requisitions, I just thought that you might be interested in looking at the issues that arose in your area. The tax requisition for your area is, I've got something in my way, so I've got to just use this. For Oliver is $1,573,000, which is an increase of $9,146, a 0.58% tax increase. And with the mosquito change, that will also be adjusted. So why there are some areas that are higher, some areas that are lower, and in this case here, I better get it. There's some stuff in, oh, here it is. I got it out of my way. So 911 call system services increased for your requisition, $3,312. Okay, this is a result of the tax requisition increase due because of the administration costs went up $2,500. Fire dispatch, which is not our contract, it's through Kelowna Cord, went up. Contract for which went up by 7,000. Cord contract, 13,000. And just to let you know, is these contracts aren't finalized yet, but we're hoping that these are the numbers that are going to come in at. The regional trails tax increase, $2,100, and this is a result of the wages, amortization on the vehicles went up. Mosquito control, that's increased, okay, as I said, by $47.98 as of this moment, but it will go down. And it's important to note on the SIR budget, as of first reading, the budget was not finalized. I understand that it did become finalized on Friday, and I'm waiting for the final numbers to come in. I'm hoping that it's not going to be a material because we aren't charging them $74,000 in administration fees anymore. This is your tax requisition, which lists all of the services that you're paying for and receiving. And these ones here is a continuation of the services, with the last two at the bottom, Okanagan Basin Water Board and the Sterile Insect Release Program outside the board's control. These are numbers that are given to us, and we just put the number, whatever they say tax, we tax, although the board can make comments. This is the tax requisition for all the member municipalities and electoral areas. There was a comment in the paper that stated that Penticton is paying $6 million for to the region district services. As you can see, the member municipalities as a whole are paying $6 million, and the electoral areas are paying $14 million. And this is just a piece of the pie that shows who pays more. And you can see a lot of electoral area D, as far as electoral areas go, they got a big piece. And yes, Penticton does pay a big chunk as far as municipalities go. And this is where you can find the 155-page budget along with the summaries that go with it. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to take them.
Any questions for Jim on the budget? Councillor Mattis? I think you're on mute, Councillor Mattis.
My apologies. Jim, first of all, I just want to thank the regional district for looking at resurfacing the river trail. I think that's a great project from McAlpine Bridge down to Road 22. I think that's huge. So that's a good thing. A couple of questions. You had a sheet on there with grant and aid requests. Is that funded by the town of Oliver? Like, are we contributing to the Scottish Festival in Penticton?
You are contributing based on assessment, yes.
Okay. Not sure why, but okay. Second question, in our Oliver tax requisition, the regional director and the mayor determined this particular line. We are paying $32,837 for economic development. Could you give us or give me a little more detail on what that is? What are we getting for our money?
I would have to get back to you on that to see exactly what Oliver would be getting. So I've got some homework, if you don't mind, from the Summerland. I'd be glad to get back to you and the mayor and council on that.
Would the mayor know what we're paying for there?
Does it have something to do with the Oliver Tourist Association?
Let me just see what I can do. Let me just find it on here.
Is that economic development you're asking about?
Yes.
Yeah, it would be our OTA.
Yeah. Our contribution.
That answer?
Yeah.
That answers the question. And my third and final question was, I noticed a big jump in our debt repayment. We went from, where was it here? 532,000 last year to 1.12 million this year. Any thoughts on, are we paying final payment on something? Or did we finance a bunch more last year that I'm not aware of? Yeah, right there. Municipal debt repayment.
I'll have to take a look, but it looks like you would have had to borrow something last year that kicked in, or 2 years ago.
We haven't borrowed anything in the last couple of years.
I will have to take a look at that. That's because that one there isn't from us, but I'll have to find out. There was something that was not exactly right for 2020. So that may be it, but I'll find out and get back to you on that.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
Is that everything, Councillor Mattis?
That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Grice?
Thank you, Your Worship, through the chair. Just a quick question. I'm wondering about the 911 services. Are they contracted through CORD for the entire regional district?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Just curious. Thank you.
Any other questions, Council, on the RDOS budget? Doesn't look like I have anything else, Jim. Thank you for making the time to come and present to us today. That's very informative, and look forward to the follow-up on the municipal debt repayment.
I'll look at that. And
Okay.
Dan, is John on?
Yes, Mayor Johansson, John Cote from the RDOS is going to present the hospital district.
Okay,
John can just share his screen and we should be good to go.
And I have to stop sharing, right?
He should just be able to override you. but you can stop share. Oh, sorry, John. I might have done that right when you were connected.
All right. See. Okay, through the chair, I guess, am I ready to proceed?
Yes, go
Okay.
ahead, John.
I was asked to present the 2021 budget and 5-year financial plan for the regional hospital district for the Okanagan-Similkameen. Just a little background. I'm one of Jim's subordinates. I'm an accountant in the RDOS. Been there about the last 15, 16 years. Quite familiar with the hospital budget. Just a little background. Can you guys hear me okay?
I think so, yeah, you're coming in okay.
Okay. The board makeup is the same as the RDOS. It's just a separate budget. The RHD provides capital funding for healthcare facilities in our region. Typically, it's either equipment, facilities, construction, renovations. We are seeing requests for information technology improvements as well. I think that's a new one that's come in the last 5 years. Typically, we fund 40% of Interior Health's capital budget for the region. I've never seen it any other, it's been 60-40 since I've been around. I've seen some other regional hospital districts on specific projects have a different cost share. It could be 50-50. But anyway, in regards to the provisional budget, the budget's currently sitting at second reading. The budget has to be adopted by March 31st. Currently, the budget's sitting at $15,228,286. This slide gives a little bit of background on just some of the things that have been going on in the last couple of years. The one major project I think that everybody's aware of is the new patient care tower that opened in 2019. That project, I think the total between the construction of the tower and the renovation of the some of the parts of the old hospital is about $320,000. The regional hospital district share was about 117 million. Right now, I think the plan was to try to fund it 60 debt, 40 reserves. Currently, we've borrowed to date about 58% of that. Currently, right now, I think in regards to the hospital tower project, I don't know if they still have any outstanding deficiencies. They're probably quite close on being finished with that. And as well, they're well underway in regards to renovating the emergency ward, pharmacy, and material stores. And they're expecting that phase of the project to be complete in 2022. Other 2021 capital equipment and improvement projects are budgeted currently right now at $2.987 million. That's just the progress payments to IHA in regards to the tower project. This slide just outlines where the budget sits currently for 2021. I'll just highlight a few items. Start at the very top. The tax requisition total is being held at the same level that it's been the past 2 years in 2020 and 2019. Another item I'll highlight is just in regards to the capital grants that sit at almost just under 8.7 million. It was higher at first reading, but the board rejected a capital request in regards to South Okanagan Primary Care Network. Our share of the ask was about 1.4 million. The total project was 3.5 million, but that particular ask was rejected, so I removed it from the budget currently. Since we're not at, we haven't adopted the budget yet, we're waiting for Interior Health to come back if they're going to drop that request at the present time, or if they want to bring it back to the board for more discussion. And the last item that I'll highlight is the MFA debt repayment. So I was saying previously that in 2020, we received a long-term debt issue of about $67.5 million. So in 2021 will be the first full year where we have the semi-annual interest payments and annual principal repayment. So that's the reason for the large increase in that line item. And the mill rate doesn't change a whole lot in regards to the average residential property assessment in the region. It goes up about, on average, I think it was about 50 cents. So depending on, you know, where an individual's property was assessed compared from 2020 to 2021 will kind of determine what level of taxation they'll pay. Oops. Wow. This slide just highlights where the pool of money in 2021 is being raised from. As you'll see, just in regards to Oliver, it went up just over $4,000. Really, the change is just due to the change in the total assessment for Oliver compared to the rest of the region. So, you know, so for compared from 2020's revised roll, they add in, you know, market evaluation changes, and you can also have economic growth, or, you know, with the new assets being taxed. Not a large increase, but just something of note. This slide just summarizes what current long-term debt is being held by the Regional Hospital District. There's 3 issues that are quite old, and in the next year or 2 they will mature and then fall off. The one at the bottom that you'll note, 68, just over 68 million, that's in regards to the Penticton Regional Hospital Tower project. You might see a discrepancy when I'd said that we borrowed 67.5 million. What happens when you borrow through MFA is that they withhold 1%. So we needed proceeds of $67.5 million. So what they do is they top it up an extra percent. So they're currently holding, I think it's almost $500,000 in a debt reserve fund. And at the end of the term of the debt, that money is paid back to the Regional Hospital District, but currently it shows as a liability. This slide just shows currently what the Regional Hospital District has in reserve and what it projects to have over the next 5 years. You'll notice in 2021 that there's quite a large reduction. That's due to the commitments in regards to the hospital tower project. So most of the first phases of the project we funded through short-term debt that we converted to long-term debt, and now we're trying to fund the remainder through reserves. I'll have a better idea of what the actual reserves are at the end of 2020 once I've done the year end. and it's been audited, and that's typically not done till about April or May. And this slide just highlights some of the capital requests made by Interior Health. Some items about the tower project, progress payments, and debt servicing costs. The one items that I'll just disclose in regards to the IHA capital request, the request over $100,000, it shows 3.9 million. So that was the original request that included the $1.4 million for the South Okanagan Primary Care Network. But that was rejected by the board as I stated previously, so that has been reduced, but I just left it on the slide. It sort of lays out what the annual debt servicing costs are in regards to the tower project over the next 25 years currently on the debt we hold. I think in the middle of 2021, we'll probably do some evaluation of what reserves we have and if we need to take out any more debt. I think the worst case scenario is we might need to take out about maybe $5 to $8 million more, but I couldn't really say at this time until we complete the 2020 year end. This slide just shows, just to give you an idea of what the 5-year average has been on Interior Health's capital requests. I've got two calculations there, one for the previous 5 years from 2016 to 2020, and the one for our current period, that would be 2017 to 2021. We just kind of use it for budgeting purposes and just as a comparison. And it has been creeping up over the last couple of years. What these figures show though is like what the original asks are by Interior Health. So if the board has rejected any, I haven't reduced them in this calculation. And oopsie. And like Jim had said earlier after his presentation, they do encourage people if they want to review the budgets on our website. You can also direct any questions to that email address, budget@rdos.bc.ca, and either Jim or I will respond hopefully with an answer that helps an individual that has any particular questions about the hospital budget. And that's the end of the presentation, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, John. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. I'll just check with council. Has anybody got a question for John about the hospital district budget? Councillor Grice?
There you go. Thank you, Your Worship. Just wondering what the sources of other revenue are. It's back from the beginning of the presentation.
Oh, that's typically just interest on reserves that we hold. We do sometimes get, in the past, we've received surplus funds from the Municipal Finance Authority. So on any debt you take out, they give you a set rate, typically for a 10-year period. So if the interest rates at the time you borrowed are high and then they go down, there can be a surplus of funds available once the debt's expired, and those funds are refunded, sort of, for lack of a better word of saying it. And it just comes back to the regional hospital district. So they'll just try to take a look at when they go to the bond market to borrow money, they pay sort of on a variable rate, but when they set our rate, it's just at a fixed rate for a set period of time. And as they pay down that debt that they borrowed on the bond market, there sometimes is money left over, and so they pay those monies back to the debt holders who've had that debt issued to them. Hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, it's mostly interest. And also, like I was saying about that debt reserve fund, it's held by MFA. It collects interest over time, And at the end of the debt, once it's expired, they pay that back to the regional hospital district. So that's usually included in other income as well.
Okay, thanks very much, John.
You're welcome.
Councillor Ventimiglia?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, John, for your presentation. You pointed out in your last slide how the budget's been creeping up substantially over the last couple of years, including this year, and that's without the 1.4 million ask for the primary care network. And so I watched with interest that last regional hospital district meeting with the conversation around the primary care network after the original conversation around primary care network with divisions. And I guess I have a couple of questions, and I'm not even sure if there's something that you're going to be able to ask, but I was wondering from a staff side of things, has there been any indication from Interior Health that they plan to come back and expand to the regional hospital district on their ask, the 1.4 million around primary care, to give a little bit more of an indication as to where they're going for the board to be able to make that decision? And then my follow-up to that would be, because it didn't happen in my couple of years at the hospital district, nor have I ever been able to find it happening before in recent memory. What happens if the board does indeed in the end refuse that $1.4 million? What happens to the ask? Does it just disappear? Does the hospital authority find the money somewhere else? Does the project get shelved? Do you have any idea how that works?
Well, to your first question, I think we're still waiting for IHA to respond to the board rejecting that request. And I can't speak for the board, but my feeling was that it was kind of, they didn't really have anything that they could share specifically as to what their plan was for that $3.5 million project, which we'd have to raise 1.4, either through taxation, debt, or reserves. So at the present time, they just weren't comfortable approving that portion of the capital ask. Can you hear me okay? Oh, yeah, okay. But in regards to the board rejecting that, if they came back with something saying that we are going to renovate this space and we're going to do this specifically, I think the board would be more supportive. So what can happen is either IHA will go to the province and say it was rejected by the regional hospital district board. The province may provide the full funding, but I couldn't say that for 100% sure either. My gut feel is that this will all get sorted out at some point when they have something specific to present the board with and say, this is what our plan is. This is what, this is the money that we require for this particular primary care network, project. But I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately, so I don't know how it'll play out, but I don't know. Does that answer both of your questions?
It does. I guess maybe a better question that I should have asked is, in your 15 or 16 years at the regional district, have you ever seen a board deny a request from the health authority?
Through the chair, I've never seen it. This is the very first time. And but this is also the very first time I've seen it where they weren't able to share a lot of specifics. It just seemed that they were asking for the money on good faith, that we don't really know what we're going to do with it, kind of thing. I think they do. They're just not able to go publicly with what their plan is. But I think once they have all that buttoned down, I think the board would be supportive. But that's not really for me to say. That's for the board to discuss. And so, but yeah, that's the very first. I've never seen it happen in my time there. So one previous hospital district chair asked what would happen, if the board rejected something, and I said, well, they would have to find the funding through somewhere else or shelve the project.
Okay, yeah, thank you, John. Thanks for the answer.
Oh, you're welcome.
Any other questions for John? Seeing none, I think we'll move on, but thank you, John and Jim, for joining us this evening and answering some questions, and much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. You people in Oliver are all right. So
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to water matters. Item 105 Park Rill Road Water Service. I will pass this over to the Director of Operations, whose report is attached.
Thank you, Your Worship and council members. This report is seeking council's consideration to bring a new property into the town of Oliver Water System Number 1 as per Water Regulation Bylaw 1351, Section 18. Before I go through the recommendations, I'll just give you a quick background to Water Regulation Bylaw 1351, Section 18. Regardless of a positive assessment by the director under Section 14, authorization must be obtained from council prior to approving a water service as the request of water service located outside the boundaries of the town and requires extension of the public water system. In this case, it's not an extension, but it is a property that's outside our current boundary for Water System 1. We've looked into it. It's very minimal service. They're asking for a 1-inch service at 105 Park Rill Road. The property owner currently have their own irrigation water system, but require domestic water for a home and a new worker housing building. There currently is, and I always spoke to it, no extension. And the property is outside the boundary. Our records indicate that there is an existing 200 millimeter PVC C900 domestic water main running down Park Rill and east and west. And on a map attached, it's not indicated on the map, but it crosses the river from our Buchanan well, which is on the east side of the river. This is one prop. We've been getting some requests for properties outside the boundary, so council may see 1 or 2 more come to council in the future. And I know that maybe some new council members haven't seen this because in recent years we haven't really had as many applications outside of the town of Oliver. So if we go back to our options, council allow the 105 Park Rill Road property be serviced by the town of Oliver's water system, or not allow 105 Park Rill Road to enter the town of Oliver's water system, or to refer back to staff for additional information. Does council have any questions?
Councillor Michelle.
Not any real questions. I read through the report and it seems like we've got enough water and it's just going to give us some additional revenue. So I'd be prepared to make the recommendation. I'll move it.
Moved. Do I have a seconder while it's on the table?
I will second.
Second with Councillor Mattis. Councillor Mattis, you had a question?
Yeah, I do have a kind of a follow-up to what Councillor Michelle said. Is it possible to get information from staff? If I'm looking at this map correctly, is there a lot of we did twinning. Did we supply all properties with domestic water when we did the twinning out in the rural? And if not, which obviously we did not, because this is one of them, and I'm hearing we're going to get more requests. Could we find out how many properties are out there that are not serviced, and whether we have capacity in each of the areas to service any of those properties? As Councilor Michelle said, maybe this is a additional source of revenue for us if we can begin providing domestic water to properties we know we currently don't service. Is that possible, Director?
That'd be a big undertaking,
Yeah.
but you can see if you refer to the map that was attached to the council's agenda,
Yeah.
it's inside the red boundaries are our current customers. Outside of that, there could potentially be some, but we're not going out and looking for them. They usually come to us when they require domestic water or irrigation water. This larger property already has a source of irrigation water, so they're just looking for good, clean domestic water and to house their workers.
Yeah, I was referring to, he's obviously pulling from the river, which is right next door for his
Yeah,
irrigation water. I was referring more to domestic service, whether there's properties out there that didn't get covered in the 20.
well, when we did the twinning in System 1, we only did twinning down the roads or areas that we currently had customers. We didn't expand that or go beyond that. And so that's why we look at, as we get requests, we look at it individually and then what the cost would be to get them services. And sometimes it does require a water main extension, which can be costly for people. Within the boundary, I mean, we could have a quick look and see, but it'd be a bit of an undertaking still to go through all the systems.
Understood.
Councillor Grace?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Director Goodsell. So just to play devil's advocate, and because I haven't done one of these yet, I'm curious if in the past these requests have ever been denied, and if so, on what grounds they would have been.
Through your worship, they have been denied, and sometimes it's mostly denied because of capacity issues in our system. Now that could be pump capacity issues, could be mainline issues, and then the upgrades would be too costly for the owner, or the town wasn't interested in expanding out for whatever reasons. I think there's been since I've been with the town, there's been a few different reasons why they haven't. It's mostly capacity issues in each system, though, is the major factor.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Michelle, your hand is still up. Did you have?
I just had one more question. I just wondering if our director knows when we put the rural twinning, what the excess capacity was built into it. I'm just curious. Was it 5%, 10%? Because I'm sure they would have put excess capacity in there. Do you know what that is, Sean? Or
for the domestic system?
Yeah, for domestic.
Yeah, and if I'm referring to System 1, because that's the freshest in my head, there is more capacity. So I think when we put in the new domestic lines, we built some capacity to bring in some new domestic water users, because I mean, over the years we have had requests that, it's hard to create potable water, and then and then treating it properly and ensuring everyone's healthy drinking it and stuff. So there is some capacity. I just don't know the exact percentage.
That's fine. I think that I agree with you. We should probably take them as they come. I don't think that we would want to undertake any kind of a study for people that are outside of our boundaries. I mean, it'll be almost first, if we have excess capacity, it'll be first come, first served. If we run out, well, then we won't be able to help anybody else. That's all my comments, Your Worship.
Any other questions for the director? Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call a question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to item 2, water quality report for January 2021. Are there any questions for the Director of Operations? Don't see any. Can I get a motion to receive the water quality report for January 2021?
So moved.
So moved. Second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to item 3, Council Procedure Amendment Bylaw 1364.01 for third reading. I will pass this over to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The procedure bylaw 136401 is before council for third reading. Just as a quick reminder, the amendments are a change to section 8.4 so that a member may participate electronically. The word may was changed from must. Section 8.5 adds a provision for committee members to participate electronically. And thirdly, section 15.1, that is under the order of proceedings in business, brings in the option for consent agendas. And we have missed the rise and report and just some renumbering of the letters. And that's my report for council.
Thank you, corporate officer. Any questions for the corporate officer?
I'll move the proposed motion.
Thank you, Councilor Grace.
I'll second.
Second, Councilor Schwarzenberger. Any further discussion? Call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Anything to report this evening, Water Councilor Sadhu?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have nothing to report, just tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Anything to report this evening, Water Councilor Michelle?
Same thing.
Thank you. Moving to bylaw, Station Street Road Closure Bylaw 1399 for adoption. I will pass this over to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw 1399, of a reminder for council, is to close a portion of a road from Veterans to Highway 97. This is in preparation for future development and for the potential Station Street Plaza. So the bylaw before you has received its first, second readings. It's gone to the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, and we have completed the advertising required under the community charter. Third reading was provided by council on January 25th, and it's before you for adoption this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, corporate officer. Any questions for the corporate officer? Can I get a motion that the Station Street Road Closure Bylaw 1399 be adopted?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and second. Any further discussion? Councillor Ventimiglia?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Just to confirm, and we did speak about this last time, but just to confirm that we don't actually have to act on road closure until such a time as we deem appropriate.
Through the chair to Councillor Ventimiglia, no, we do not have to act on it instantly.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Mattis?
Thank you, Your Worship. That was part of my question, but it's just a follow-up to that question. By not closing the road, even though we deem it closed, does that create any liability for the town if traffic goes through there?
Not at this time.
Any other questions, discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to business, first item, recognition and gift policy, employees and council members. I will pass this over to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report before council, the recognition and gift policy for employees and council members, is to seek council's consideration to amalgamate the gift policy, staff service recognition policy, and staff retirement policy into one new policy, which would be titled as recognition and gift policy for employees and council members. As a bit of a background, this is part of your review and was brought to you April 27th. At the meeting, council made the notation that the gift policy recognizes both council and staff, and commenting that potentially there could be some consideration to separate them out as a council and an administrative policy. Staff determined that recognition of an employee's service is done at the council level, so we've left it as a council policy. Also, as part of the review, we looked at the staff service recognition policy and staff retirement policy, as they were of similar scope. All three policies have been amalgamated into one, and for both employees and council members. The new amalgamated policy is attached, and it is noted as draft onto my report. I just want to point out that there is a new provision that's been added under the long service recognition title to accommodate employees who may leave the organization and may have the opportunity to return, and we'd be happy to welcome them back. Provision 6 is prior service will be considered, provided that there has not been a break of greater than 1 year. Additionally, looking at the older policies, it was determined that the gift amounts were different in each of the policies, and looking at the dates of the policies was in 1996, and to consider values more reflective for 2021, a slight increase in the gift value amount from $30 to $50, with a minimum of $50 to a maximum of $500. As I mentioned, that's just reflective of values. And that's my report, and I'll take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Corporate Officer. Any questions for the Corporate Officer? Councillor Mattis?
No questions, Your Worship. I just want to thank the corporate officer for all the work that she's done on the reviewing of all of the policies. I know it's part of her job, but she's done a great job. I will make the motion that council adopt the recognition gift policy, employees and council members, and that council rescind the gift policy not dated, and that council rescind the staff service recognition policy dated April 25th, 1994, and that council rescind the staff retirement policy dated November 25th, 1996.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to item 2, webcast and local programming council meeting policy. Again, I'll pass this over to the corporate officer.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. The report before council for webcast and local programming council meetings policy is to secure an enactment of this new revised policy. Again, this policy was the old policy was brought to you back in September. It was called the video taping of council meetings. At this meeting, council commented that the policy required updating to meet current practices, and that there is support within council to allow the community cable channel camera placement in chambers. The new webcast and local programming policy indicates that the town of Oliver provides the webcasting service, and as you know, it can be viewed live or through archive recordings. The meetings that are webcast are committee of the whole, regular meetings, special, open, and public hearings. The town has recently just received confirmation from the local cable company that they wish to continue it when we're back in chambers, and they'll be working with the Deputy Director of Operations to ensure their camera and switching device is operational in chambers. The policy also includes guidelines for use and advising that the public are consenting to disclosure of their personal information through their speech or presentation, and that the cable provider is responsible for their hardware and technical requirements. And lastly, that we can't guarantee a successful live stream or recruiting due to circumstances beyond our control, which may be internet difficulties or some other hardware issue. So Thank you for the last report and Councillor Mattis reading the resolution, but I will read that for you, that council adopt the webcast and local programming council meetings policy, and that council rescind the videotaping council meeting policy dated April 10th, 2007. Thank you.
Thank you.
So moved.
So moved. Thank you. Second?
Second.
Second. Any questions or discussion? Call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to item 3, 2021 property tax due dates. I'll pass this over to the Deputy Finance Officer.
Thank you, Worship. The Deputy Finance Officer is not available tonight, so I'm going to take his report. The purpose of the report is to receive Council's direction for establishing the 2021 tax due date and penalty dates and penalty amounts. Last year, you may recall that Council chose to keep the July, I think it was July 2nd last year, due date the same, but it was only a 1% penalty. And an additional 4% penalty was applied as of, September 30th, October 1. So this year, in order to provide staff with some lead time, if we're going to return back to our previous penalty dates that have been in place for many, many years, of the July 2nd date, return back to a 10% penalty. We need some direction from Council to do that, as well as there will be some changes to our tax form anyway this year, because the provincial government has implemented a homeowner grant centralization project. So municipalities will not be processing homeowner grants in 2021, and which is long overdue, I might add. That's my own personal commentary. That's been way long overdue. That's a provincial program. So with that, Your Worship, staff is seeking some direction from Council as to what your feelings are for the penalty due date, as well as the amounts of the penalties for 2021. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Questions for the Chief Financial Officer? Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't really have a question, but I would just say that the reason that we reduced the penalties and reduced and changed the timing last year, those reasons are still upon us this year to deal with COVID and to give our people a little bit of a break that may be suffering from unemployment or whatever. So I would say that we should continue with the same structure we had last year. The funds that we lost, which I believe in the report said about $20,000, are covered under the COVID relief plan, so that we didn't lose any money last year. And as we still have money left in the COVID relief fund, we could probably use that to recover for this year as well. So those are my thoughts. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. All I can do is echo what Councillor Schwarzenberger said. He basically took the words right out of my mouth, so I support going in that direction as well. Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Would you like to put a motion on the table, Councillor Schwarzenberger?
Certainly, Your Worship. I would say that Council adopt the 2021 tax date of July 2nd with a 1% non-payment penalty applied July 3rd and an additional 4% non-payment penalty applied October 1.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair to our CFO, I just wanted, have we heard anything from the province with regards to how they're going to delay payment for commercial properties or anything? That's one of the things that we had in prior last year, that they had adjusted the commercial properties payment due date to October 1st. Is that continuing on for this year, or have they gone back to the original way that they were of July 2nd?
Through the chair to CAO, I have not heard anything from the provincial government in terms of class 4, class 5, class 6. That's the assessment classes that you're referring to. So that could still change, obviously. We still have time. One of the reasons that we came forward to council right now, as I indicated, is we need to make some modifications to our tax notice, and it takes some lead time to do that. So we just want to get some indication from council where what the due dates were going to be, because those type of things are typeset into the form document. So we needed that for our software supplier. So yeah, this motion, whichever, the motion that's on the floor, we can certainly accommodate that.
Councilor Michelle.
Yeah, just through the CFO, can you remember we extended that those penalty reductions to water rates last year as well, didn't we?
Not for property taxes, no.
Well, the actual water rates.
If there was, yes, we did. If the water parcel tax and the sewer parcel tax are part of the property taxes, so yes, the 1% and the 4% would apply. The reductions that you're referring to in the water rates were a totally different issue, but we did do them. You're absolutely correct.
Okay, and they wouldn't be part of this motion then?
No.
No. How about the penalties for the water last year?
The penalties for water did not change. The penalties were that 10%. We did not decrease the penalties for water.
Okay. Well, I would suggest that if we're going to do it for taxes, that we should do it for water as well. And if there are funds there available in that COVID relief that and water, it ends up being $10,000 or whatever, then that we'd get that from that as well. But I don't know if that can be included in this motion.
Through the chair, I would probably, I'm not chairing the meeting, but I would make it a separate motion.
Okay.
Let's deal with this motion, Councilor Michelle, and then we can ask for an alternative one.
That's fine.
Councilor Mattis?
Thank you, Your Worship. I know we keep dipping into the COVID fund. Would the CFO have any indication of how much we have scooped out of that trough so far in the last year? I know, I believe the total we got is 1.5 million or something like that, but how much have we used and how fast are we burning through this?
Through to the chair, Councilor Mattis, we received 1.591 million. About a month ago, I think just before Christmas, I brought a staff report to council that we use it for the various replenishing our water rates, our sewer rates, garbage. I think there was a few other things. The tax 9%, we utilized that. Anyway, to make what we did, I believe we allocated about $650,000. So we still have about 930,000. And I will be bringing a staff report to, I believe it's next council meeting, in regards to some of our local community groups that have, I wouldn't use the word request, but are in a situation where they are hurting due to COVID, their revenue losses, such as tourism, such as parks and recreation, archives, and Venables Theater. So that's going to be, and I don't know the numbers on those, and council, of course, has the wherewithal to make any decision that they wish with that types of groups. So.
Thank you for that answer. I would just caution council then that we should, somewhere along the line, we're going to have to get back to normal, and maybe a small step. It's only $20,000 that we're talking here, that this could be a small step to going back to normal. At the rate that we're going, the 1.6 million may not outlast the need. So we might have to unfortunately start thinking about loading some of this back onto the taxpayers. I appreciate everything everyone is trying to do. I totally understand what we're trying to do, but we also have to use some caution and recognize that somewhere along the line, we're going to hit a wall. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mattis. Councillor Ventimiglia.
Thank you, Worship. I was going to say something similar-ish, I guess. I think last year, when we were having this conversation in the spring, we were all being kind of gobsmacked with new reality. We didn't know what was up, what was down, and even like what the next 24 hours were going to look like, really. And so we were all now living with this sort of new reality, nearly a full 12 months. By the time tax time comes, it's another 5 or 6 months down the road. I do understand that there are many in our community that are struggling even more now than they were at this time last year as a result of everything that's gone on. So perhaps in recognition of that, I agree with maybe postponing our deadlines a bit or pushing out our deadlines a bit, but I would like to see us get to the full 10% penalty by the end of the year. The way it's written now and the way that we did it last year was a 1% and then a 4%, and we never got to the full 10%. So given that our largest, or our best access to an earning season, even for those that are not employed year round here, happens to be the spring and the summer, that gives a bit of extra earning potential over the spring and summer months. But I would like to see us get to the full 10% by the end of the year.
Thank you, Councillor Ventimiglia. Question, I have a couple questions. First one, CFO, the $20,000, has that been built into the 2021 budget? Let's just wondering on a revenue point, how much revenue have you included in the 2021 budget for late fees associated with property tax?
Through the chair, I would have to, I don't have the budget right handy, but I would, and I can't recall it, but I believe we would have returned that back to the original penalty amount, which I believe we usually collect around $35,000. And so it would have been in that ballpark.
35,500.
How much, sorry?
35,500. I have the budget in front of me.
The another thing I did want to mention too is that one of the interesting things that we found during tax collection, if you recall, I brought those statistics forward to council for the total taxes collected at the various times of the year. We saw a because of our population, our demographic of our population in Oliver, I think it was like 87% of our total tax levy was collected on July 2nd. So it really, a lot of municipalities that I reached out to were at 70%, 60%, because a lot of our people are on fixed incomes. They were totally, it didn't matter to them. They would just pay it when the taxes were due. Commercial was, of course, they were, that was treated differently last year, but the residential was a strong payment by July 2nd.
One other question. One of the reasons I voted against this last year was my concern that we weren't going to collect enough for our RDOS and other remittances that we had to give out. Were we able to collect? I guess with the 87%, we probably were able to collect enough money.
Through the chair, the regional district, yes, we were certainly in a positive cash flow with the regional district, which helped us a lot. All municipalities in British Columbia, when the province deferred the school tax payment until January, I think it was around the 5th or the 10th, something like that, of 2021, that helped out immensely because, of course, a large part of our taxes are school taxes that we pay to the province. So we were in a positive cash flow, and that has not been announced as well, whether or not the school taxes are going to be deferred in 2021.
So just as a follow-up to that, if the school tax does not get deferred, would that mean we have to do a short-term borrowing bylaw to?
Possibly a revenue anticipation borrowing, yeah, possibly. I'd have to look at the cash flows a little harder. Our cash flows right now are taking a little bit of a dip simply because of Gallagher project and the provincial government's, hopefully we're gonna hear something soon with that $5 million. Yeah, it's quite possible we would have to take some action to make sure our cash flows are covered.
Okay. Councillor Grice?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I do appreciate the comments that I've heard. I'm still in favor of the motion that's on the table right now. Part of the reason being is we're offering a lot less, I think, to the taxpayers in a way of relief than we did last year. Last year, we also took away the 9% increase, which is coming back this year. Plus, we're looking at possibly making up some of the difference because we didn't bring our tax base up last year. So I think this is just a small olive branch, but it's something that I think is feasible for us to do, especially knowing that we can recoup those funds through the COVID-19 recovery fund. So I think that if there's something that we can do to help people, I know that, my family isn't back to where we were before this all started. I think a lot of people are still suffering financially, and if there's something that we can do, I think we should. Thank you.
Councillor Mattis?
Thank you, Your Worship. But just to follow up on that last comment, if we're going to offer an olive branch, it should be offered to everyone, not those that are late in payment. I will not be supporting the motion.
Councillor Schwarzenberger?
Thank you, Worship. Just with regards to Councillor Mattis's comment, I think we have to, this is as Councillor Grice said, it's a small olive branch and it's to the people who need it. We're lucky that 87% of the residential taxpayers were able to pay their taxes on time. And obviously the 13% that weren't are in financial difficulty. So this is a little something to give them a step up or a little hope. And I hope this goes through. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Councillor Mattis?
Thank you, Your Worship. A question through the CFO. That 87%, how does that compare with previous years?
Through the chair to Councillor Mattis, usually we're around 95, 96%.
So we would be helping 7%. The other 5% are always late.
Yes.
Councillor Ventimiglia?
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with Councillor Schwarzenberger's comments, and I just wonder if the mover and seconder of the motion would be open to the idea of changing the final percentage in, I think it's September 30th, from 4% to 9%. Oh, I see it there, October 1st.
I'll leave that to Councillor Schwarzenberger since he was the mover.
Thank you, Worship. No. I'd like to vote on the motion as it stands.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. You just made me giggle out loud. I liked your answer.
Good discussion. I think I would be honest to say that I started this discussion supporting the motion, but after hearing about the school tax, and we haven't heard whether that's going to be delayed or not, and that we did come up short. We will come up short if the school tax is not deferred, which is going to be another hit to us, considering we're taking a hit on the Gallagher Lake a bit, having to do some financing until we get our money there. I think in order for me to support the motion, it isn't so much the hit on the end, it's the hit at the beginning. I think that I would be more in favor of like a 3% or 4% at the beginning and leave the 4% at the end, I guess. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I guess maybe more like 10% at the end, but I think we need to make sure that we get enough, we have a good cash flow to be able to make those remittances when they're due. And if things don't roll out exactly the way they did last year, we could end up having to borrow money to pay taxes or pay those remittances. So the way the motion is written here, I will be opposed to it. Councillor Ventimiglia, is that still your hand up?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I guess through to the CFO, because we are able to recoup these funds, are we not able to recoup them prior to being in a debt situation?
I'm sorry, through the chair, I didn't quite understand you.
So because we are able to recoup these funds by deferring the tax penalty and deadline, we can recoup them through the COVID-19 recovery fund. Are we not able to do that prior to being in a situation where we're in debt to the?
The only, through the chair, the only monies that we would recoup would be the lost penalty revenue.
Yeah.
Any of the other monies that are, if we have to pay school tax, which comes due, it's right around about the middle of July. And that's usually in the neighborhood of about, I think it's around $800,000, $900,000, something like that. So it definitely is challenging. Last year we would have been able to, even if we kept our penalty the same. But certainly by allowing I think last year the province and everybody was very concerned about the whole COVID pandemic, and we still are, obviously, but I think there's a little bit more light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccinations, albeit as slow as it's coming out. But it's certainly still going to be a challenging year financially for many municipalities, and all of us not. We're part of them as well.
So to follow up, if I may, do you know when we'll have that information in regards to the deadline for the school tax levy, if that's?
Through the chair, I sit in on various GFOA website webinars of the collectors forums, and that's government finance officers, and there hasn't been a mention of it, which is kind of, and I can't remember when I'm scheduled to sit in on one again, but I'll reach out to my peers to see if they've heard anything, because it's usually there's some email that comes out or some newsletter or something, and it's been very quiet. So I'll see what I can do.
Thank you.
Any further question, discussion, council? Seeing none, I will ask the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion?
I am opposed.
I'm opposed.
And I'm opposed. Motion fails.
Could I invite Councillor Ventimiglia to try again?
Okay, well, with that invite, then I would like to try again, and I'm just trying to figure out exactly what to say. So that council adopted 2021 property tax due date of July 2nd with a 1% not payment penalty applied July 3rd and an additional 9% applied October 1st. I mean, I think that, so I know that there's been some discussion about different percentages at the beginning versus the end. But I think if we look at our record from last year versus the years before, generally speaking, give or take a few, those that can afford to pay by the due date are going to do so, and aren't going to hold back for that 1% penalty. And those that truly can't afford, this gives them a couple of extra months to do so. But in the end, we don't end up behind where we would have been in any normal year.
I'll second this motion.
Councillor Mattis?
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, I go back to our discussion that we had previously and the words of our CFO. It's not a matter of penalties, it's a matter of cash flow. And what we're attempting to do with this is create cash flow, create an incentive for people to pay their bills on time. by only having a 1% penalty at the very beginning, and whether it's 4% or 9% at the end, won't make them pay any quicker, because the penalty is until October or until September 30th, the penalty is 1%. And until you change that 1% penalty, there's no incentive. This will not create any greater cash flow than the previous motion.
Councillor Ventimiglia.
Well, I was just in response, then perhaps I shouldn't have been invited to make the motion, but that's the motion I wanted to make. That's exactly how I feel. I
understand. Would you accept a friendly?
Maybe you should have made it yourself. No, I think this is how I feel. I feel that those that can afford to pay, generally speaking, will do so. And we can see that, if we compare last year to the years prior, we're a few percentage off, but generally those that can afford to pay will do so. And I believe that we can ward our tax requisitions accordingly, as we did last year. If you can afford to do so, please pay on time. And we're trusting that people will do the right thing, but really doing our best to help those that are still in a situation where they're struggling.
Thank you, Councillor Ventimiglia. CFO, can you tell me how many people missed the October 1st deadline?
Through the chair, not the number of people. I top of my, I don't even want to guesstimate. Like I said, I know it was about 6% difference. So I can't remember if that was how much dollars wise that was, and that was collected at the end of the. Certainly, we did collect some from the commercial, but there was commercial properties that paid on July 2nd as well. So it it just depended.
Councillor, excuse me, Councillor Mattis, is that your?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to the CFO. What is our deadline for your, this is a requirement that you've had to change the tax notices, that sort of thing. What would your deadline be on this?
Through the chair to Councillor Mattis, I don't know that, but I'm pretty certain, just because I know when we usually will have our tax notices, we need them completed by about, printed, things like that, and proofed, but certainly by the middle of April. So I would think towards the middle of March, and you're really getting to a D-Day right around then.
So that would give you sufficient time, and I know I'm asking for more work from you, to give cash flow projections based on what happened last year. And I'm asking for that based on the assumption that there's no movement by the provincial government on school taxes and no movement on business taxes. If we could get some measure of the cash flow report, that would, to make sure that we can cover our bills. Maybe we don't need to make this decision tonight, that we could get a cash flow report that would say, yeah, we actually need to incent people to pay by August 1st. Maybe not July 1st, but August 1st, we absolutely have to have the money in the door, and could set the penalties accordingly in order to incent people to pay.
Through the chair, I keep track of the cash flow daily, and I also it goes out to the fall. I just obviously don't know it right now from where I'm located, but I could certainly bring a report back to council.
I personally would like to see that before I would make a decision on what the penalties would be. Because if there's no need to create an incentive for payment, then I would be more than happy to support this motion. If there's a need to create a greater incentive for payment, then I wouldn't be able to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mattis. Councillor Ventimiglia?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I actually like that idea. And if according to the CFO, the information is easily accessible, just not handy right this exact minute, then I would be more than willing to postpone, never quite know the right word to use, table or postpone this motion to the following meeting?
Withdraw.
No, postpone it.
Postpone.
It's moved and seconded, so you're going to do a motion to postpone.
If I understood correctly, the information is easily accessible, just needs to be pulled out. So we should be able to have it 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So were you making a motion to postpone this, Councillor Ventimiglia?
Yes.
Okay.
I would second that.
It doesn't have to be the seconder of the first motion? Just, okay. Okay,
Oh, you could hear me, but nobody else could.
I heard
No,
you through the wall, yeah.
it's a brand new motion. So
Okay,
it would be that the motion be postponed to the February 22nd council meeting. That consideration of the motion be postponed.
any discussion, questions on this motion? Hearing none, I will ask the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Okay, moving on to item 4, temporary use permit, 511 Church Avenue. I will pass this over to the Director of Operations.
Director of Development Services, although it would be good if the Director of Operations wants to give this a stab.
I apologize.
That's all right.
Director Houle.
I'll just do a quick, just trying to share my screen here. Diane, are you able to? Oh, here we go. Thank you. I'll just do a quick summary because council's pretty familiar with this, but temporary use permit 2020-18. The application is seeking a 3-year temporary use permit to operate a cold weather shelter with a maximum of 10 beds seasonally, November 1st to March 31st, and to store a maximum of 1 metal storage container during the time that the shelter is in operation. The shelter would occur within the bottom floor of the existing United Church, which is approximately 3,200 square feet in size. Some photos of the subject property. On the left is the east elevation from Kootenay Street, and on the right is the photo from Church Avenue. Some photos there of the property. South property line showing the emergency exit on the left, and the south property line showing the break in the wall there where the property line is. With that, there's 3 options for council. Council approve the temporary use permit, and as a condition, the following works be completed as per figure 10 of the Development Services Report dated November 9th, 2020 to provide adequate emergency egress from the south side of the building to the street and to provide privacy from 6242 Kootenay Street. A fence be installed along the eastern half of the south property line, an emergency access to the street be provided through the existing rock wall, and that staff be directed to issue the permit. Option 2 is that council may choose to deny the permit, and option 3 is council may choose to refer it back to staff for additional information. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Director of Development Services. Councillor Grice.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm more or less in favor of the motion as written here. However, based on the conversation that we had during the committee of the whole meeting earlier, I think that seeing as this location isn't going to go away and likely this won't be functioning this year anyways prior to the end of the cold season, I would be happy to defer the decision until after the cold weather shelter working group has met and that we've received a report on what they've come up with. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grice. Councillor Ventimiglia, is that your hand up for a new question?
Oh my goodness, the hand needs to automatically come down. No.
Okay. Councillor Mattis.
You're muted. You're muted. You're muted. Councillor Mattis, you're muted. But it was really good.
My apologies. once again. I'm going to take it on faith that when the committee does get together, that they will be looking at this location and other locations. The reason for this, right from the start, for this particular location was that it is a requirement to have something in place so that funding can be applied for from the provincial government. The longer we put this off, the longer the process takes and the less likelihood that things would move forward, even in time for next year. I have confidence in the committee that once they have this in place, that they will not hang themselves on this particular location, but rather say, okay, now that we have a location, we can apply for funding, and then we can use that funding wherever we can find a location, whether it's here or somewhere else, but that they won't give up looking. And I have confidence in that committee to do that. So I would support the motion on the table.
Which motion is that, Councillor Mattis?
That is to move ahead with the temporary use permit.
Okay.
Not that it's moved or seconded. It's just, I'm just discussing it at this point. But I would want to move ahead so that they can get a budget in place and apply for funding.
Well, it would actually be good if we had a motion on the table to continue.
Then
the
I will
discussion.
move the motion that council approve temporary use permit 2020-18, and that as a condition of the permit, the following works be completed as per figure 10 of the Director of Development Services report dated November 9th, 2020, to provide adequate emergency egress from the south side of the building to the street, and to provide privacy fencing from 6242 Kootenai Street. A fence be installed along the eastern half of the south property line, and emergency access to the street be provided through the existing rock wall, and that staff be directed to issue the permit.
Well, then I will second that motion.
Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Worship. We have discussed this a lot, obviously, and earlier today. I don't think I'm going to be able to vote in favor of this motion. I think when we put this on our strategic plan a couple of years ago, what I envisioned, and maybe I was wrong, but what I envisioned was an actual emergency temporary shelter that would be engaged when the temperature dropped to where it is tonight and this week. And then as temperatures warmed up, it would disappear. And apparently the province doesn't fund that anymore, or they don't fund it under these kind of conditions. So now we have a permanent a permanent shelter that will be operational for 5 months, or semi-permanent. And I really think this is the wrong location for that. I don't believe that a shelter of this kind, which will be in operation day and night for 5 months, should be this close to a residential area. So I really want, I really see a vision for this. I think the town needs it, but I think this is the wrong location. And I'd love to hear what the committee has to say, but I'm not willing to vote in favor of this on the chance that the committee decides that they want to try and find a different location when this is the location that council will have approved for the next 3 years. So I can't support this motion. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. I don't see any hands up. I will weigh in too on this. For me, when considering this temporary use permit, again, for me, the highest priority feedback is from the neighborhood that's going to be directly affected. This permit is for a use that was not allowed nor anticipated when people chose to live in the area and or purchase their properties. What I'm hearing is this neighborhood is not in favor of the permit, at least at this time, to allow this change in use. And I have to respect that. This is something they didn't ask for, that if we vote, we're going to be imposing it upon them and in their neighborhood. And I have to respect their feedback, particularly in this matter where something is being proposed to go into the neighborhood that didn't exist there before. And because of that, I will not be able to vote in support of this temporary use permit. That being said, the overall feedback does support the need for an emergency shelter in town. There was lots of comments that indicated, even though that they didn't support it there, that they did support something in town. And I would hope the committee would be able to work moving forward and find an alternative location elsewhere in town. But at this time, I will not be able to support this motion. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Worship. A couple of questions. One through to the CAO. If this motion is defeated, are we waiting 6 months to revisit this issue of the temporary use permit at that location?
Yes, through the chair.
Thank you. And I guess my comments, I mean, I was happy to wait and see what the committee came up with. However, I feel that the town has done a really exhaustive search of looking for locations. So if we know that this is something that we want, I mean, this is very close to my home too. And I know it's not next door, but you know, I certainly feel quite comfortable seeing people housed when it's cold, whether or not it's near me. I mean, our town is quite small. You know, square footage wise, or, you know, square kilometer wise, or however you want to look at it. And so it's going to be really difficult. I mean, I would challenge that we could not find any location that would get positive feedback from the neighboring properties, because nobody wants this next door to them. And that's just a challenge that we're going to have to face as a council, is that we have to decide what's best for the community as a whole. And people who are experiencing homelessness are just as much a part of our community as anyone else, including the neighbors of a proposed shelter. So although it's a difficult decision, and it's, you know, it's scary, it's a bit of a leap. We've never done something like this before. I think that if we've made a decision as a council to house people who are cold, that we're going to have to go forward at some point with a location, and it's going to be an unpopular decision amongst the neighbors, regardless of where it is. Those are my comments for now. Thank you.
Councillor Ventimiglia.
Thank you, Worship. So I, as well, wouldn't be able to support this motion at this time. I think that quite fairly, a lot of people that will be most directly affected by potentially having a shelter in their neighborhood are looking for more information and more certainty. And I don't think we have that yet. This may end up being the very best location. And if that's the case, I would hate to see it fall off the table for 6 months, and would suggest that maybe we table it until after the committee has met and we've had a bit more discussion. But I think that moving this motion this evening, having a similar amount, yes, we've done, staff has done a great job at looking into other possible locations, but as far as the actual running of the shelter, policing issues around the shelter, all of those sorts of questions that the neighbors had, we have no more information today than we did a couple of months ago. And I think by moving this motion and granting the temporary use permit, whether or not we as a council believe that that's where the shelter will eventually end up, could be seen as a bit aggressive or hostile by the neighbors, and will honestly most likely put those that are feeling angst even more on edge. So I don't think there's while I don't want to see us postpone this for months and months and months and months, because to Councillor Mattis's point, we can get far enough down the road that by the time we actually approve something, we're not going to be ready for next year either. I wouldn't want to see that happen. I think that it would be a good idea on our part to wait and see what the committee has to say after the first couple of meetings, and perhaps revisit the conversation as a council in a month or two. So knowing that if this motion is defeated, and I think it sounds like enough of us have said that we would be voting against, that it would be defeated, and that we wouldn't be able to revisit it for 6 months, I would, can I make the motion that it be tabled, or does the mover of the original motion has to do that?
You're muted, Kathy.
Through the chair, anyone can make a motion to postpone. It does not have to be the mover or the seconder of a motion.
Okay, so I would like to.
How
make-
about if I withdraw the motion?
It's
Okay.
been moved and seconded. It cannot be withdrawn.
Thank you.
Okay, so then I would just make a motion that we table or postpone this motion that's been moved and seconded until after the meeting. I don't know what the committee's called, but after the upcoming meeting of the Cold Weather Shelter Committee.
I'll second that motion.
Should it say something about the committee meeting and developing a plan, actually? Because it doesn't really make much sense that we just talk about this 3 days after they do without any follow-up. Yeah, perfect.
Councillor Mattis?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was actually going to make a comment on the first motion. And the comment that I would make on that first motion before we move to the consideration to be tabled is that council should be aware that the old Sears building directly across the street from this church is zoned to accommodate exactly what we're talking about. So this is right across the street, and it requires no input or approval from council or anyone else in order to open this same shelter directly across the street. Just like everyone to keep that in mind, that when you talk about the neighborhood, it can be done in the neighborhood without a temporary use permit.
Thank you, Councillor Mattis. Councillor Grice?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think moving forward with this new motion to say develop a plan, I think is a little bit vague. So I think if there's specific information that members of council are looking for prior to making that decision, that should at least, even if it's not in the motion, be communicated to staff so that we know what to bring back. They know what to bring back. Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Councillor Grice. One of the things that I would like to see, and that we didn't get with the follow-up meeting on the location there at the church, was an operational plan that included how security was going to be managed. And I was hoping that that would be fleshed out a little more, that would be able to be proposed to the neighborhood so that they would perhaps feel more comfortable that the issues that are sometimes associated with these facilities would not exist with this facility. So I would definitely like to see that kind of feedback come out of a plan so that it's clear how many staff are going to be there, what the security is going to be there, how they're going to manage difficult situations, how the RCMP are going to be involved. I think all those things are important to making people feel at least a little more comfortable when considering this. CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. A number of the things that the committee will be looking at is all of the policies that would be part of how the shelter is run, which would include the operational plan, the security, staffing, management, RCMP involvement. So that's all underneath their procedures, et cetera, that they have to, the policies that they have to put into place.
Awesome, thank you. Councillor Ventimiglia, is your hand still up or is that a new comment?
Oh my goodness, no, leftover.
Okay. We have a motion on the table. Moved and seconded that consideration of motion be tabled until the Cold Weather Shelter Committee meet and develop a plan. Any further comment, discussion on that motion? Hearing none, I will ask the question, is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried.
I'm opposed, Your Worship.
Okay.
I was muted there. I'm opposed.
Sorry. Anyone else opposed? Motion carried. Moving to item 5, FCM Municipal Asset Management Program, Advancement of Asset Management Program. The Director of Operations has a report for us.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is to seek Council's approval for a resolution for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Asset Management Grant. The options are quite wordy right now, but I'll just give you some background. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities has a municipal asset management program grant currently available, and they're providing multiple intakes opportunities until the funding runs out. However, staff feel it would be beneficial to submit to the current intake to increase the opportunity for the funding. The grant stipulates the project must be completed within 12 months. Staff are recommending submitting the grant application in order to advance our asset management program. So the town, I know that we're not complete. We haven't completed our general capital yet. It was in there, but the town would have to commit $12,500 in order to get additional $50,000 towards the program and do more of the asset management stuff that we want to continue to grow and be better at. So the options, did anybody want me to read those out, or I didn't do the wording for the options, but I guess I was told from our engineers that they're sticklers on the wording for the resolution.
Councilor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I looked in our budget, and the question would be, is this an additional $12,500 for asset management? We're already putting in $18,260 in asset management, which is an increase of $2,660 over last year. So is this work in addition to, or can we reallocate $12,500 of the $18,000 that we already have in our operational budget?
I'm not aware of I don't have that in front of me right now, the operation budget.
Well, under Public Works, Common Services, Asset Management, we've been spending $13,000, $11,000, $14,000, $15,000, and then this year we're asking for $18,000 for asset management. Doesn't give any details, it just says asset management. It's been an ongoing program that we keep hearing is supposed to come to an end, but never seems to.
Well, I know that our engineering tech does a portion of his salary is to go to that program. So when he has time, or we devote some time to it, there's a lot of inputting that's involved, and he's continued to grow the Lightship program. And we're getting closer to the end, but there's still some work to do. And there's some, I want to look into some reporting mechanisms too, so that we can come to council and actually be able to present some of the assets and look at the things that are more critical or older, or things that we need to look at. So that is hopefully between town staff and Tree Engineering that we can put that together and be able to present something down the road here.
So what is the time frame for this application?
The time frame for this one is 1 year.
No, I'm talking about the intake.
Oh, the intake, I don't have the dates in front of me, but I was told that it's about every 2 weeks, and they're allowing an intake, and then until funding runs out. So
Is it possible to get a better indication of what the $18,000 in our budget is, and what portion of that would be reallocated to this? I'm a little hesitant to add another $12,000 to a $18,000 budget. That's my concern here. I appreciate the $50,000, but we're often led by the provincial government and the federal government. Just give us another 12,000 and we'll give you 50, and then it leads into more spending beyond that somehow.
Let me just go to the CAO and then the CFO.
Thank you, Your Worship. This 12.5 is actually identified in the capital budget, not in the operating budget. And it's shown in the capital budget as 12.5, and then the additional fees for from the grant funding of $50,000, I think. So that's where that 12.5 is located. And
the 18.6
is the operations of maintaining and staff time, et cetera, for inputting and expanding on the inventory that we currently have. We have a lot of inventory, and we don't have one individual that's all they do. So it does come off the corner of desks. So it takes us longer than a year or 2 years to get all of our asset management information up to date.
CFO, did you have a comment?
You're on mute, Doug.
Thank you. No, it's exactly what the CAO said. This 18,000 is the operating cost. That's the staff time and various other costs to upkeep the program. The actual grant itself is in the capital budget.
So are we not meeting soon to finish up the capital budget? Could this not fall under that that meeting?
Through the chair, yes, we could, and it's just that I'm not sure about the intake's been open this year, and I'm just worried that maybe we'll miss the opportunity, but maybe another couple of weeks isn't going to make a difference. I just couldn't tell you. I don't have an answer for that right now.
Well, my understanding was we were going to have a meeting in a few days to finish up the budget, but I could be wrong.
I think our meeting's on the 23rd, so it is a couple weeks away. But I would ask the Director of Operations, maybe in preparation for that budget meeting, if he could maybe provide a bit of an overview on what he's expecting to be accomplished with the, I guess, the $62,500. What's the deliverable to the town of Oliver, and how close this plan will be to the asset management plan will be to be completed? I'm thinking, probably wanting to put together a 10-year capital plan for the town of Oliver, but I would like to have that information as well so that we know what we're going to get for the, should we get the grant money?
Thank you, Your Worship. I can answer some of that. It's listed in the option 1, expansion of detailed asset inventory. That means we need to still put in some more time, and sometimes it's a little bit laborious. We're in the process of doing a road inventory update and then inputting that into our lightship program as well, just to see how our roads have been doing for the last 6 or 7 years, and asset management tool training. And then also, maybe that's not listed on here, I asked True and our Eng Tech to come up with a way of us being able to extract that information and report it, and with visuals and graphs and put it together. And True was going to take the information, and even from the other from the previous water capital and sewer capital reports, and kind of combine it all into one report.
And just as a follow-up, how far along will our asset management plan be at that point in time?
I think within the year we should be close to completing 95% of the program. That would be a guess, but and it's always growing, right? And it's always changing. And if we want to add more inventory, we can. as time proceeds. But for the bulk of it, it should be done within the year.
Thank you, Director. Does anyone on council have any thoughts or would be fine with delaying this till our capital budget discussion on January or February 23rd? Councilor Grace?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm fine to discuss it during our next budget meeting.
Councilor Mattis?
Thanks, Your Worship. I was the one that put that forward, but at this point, I'd be, if I could get that in writing from the director that it would be 99.9% completed in a year, I'd be happy to move ahead tonight.
I don't have an answer for that. I never pulled out the 99.9%. So
I would suggest somebody put a motion forward to postpone this consideration of this request.
I'll move that council postpone consideration of this request until the February 23rd budget meeting.
I would second that.
Seconded. I would just comment that I would support the motion as well, and look forward to the director just having a little bit of time to think about it and just confirm, what we're going to achieve with this additional asset management grant funding and how far the plan will be along within a year of getting that. Any further comments, discussion? I'll ask the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to item 6, SILGA resolution, Energy Management BC, cold weather events. I will ask Councilor Grace just to give us an overview on this motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think some of this had to get conglomerated a little bit. I was a bit heavy on the whereas clauses when I initially submitted this to staff, but just based on the conversations that we've been having about cold weather shelter, BC Housing has changed their funding formula and aren't funding on an emergency basis, which is, I think, what we're in right now is a cold weather emergency. I know it's hard for me to sleep last night knowing that it's, basically a life-threatening situation for people who are experiencing homelessness right now. So my recommended motion is that, as they don't now, that Emergency Management BC do consider a cold weather event to be an emergency, which would allow the town to enact our emergency social services, which we already have locations, volunteers funding, those sorts of things in place. So that if we do have a cold weather emergency, or because this is SILGA, someone else in the region has a cold weather emergency, that they would be able to enact those services. And that's the nutshell of my motion.
Councilor Mattis?
Thank you, Worship. I think it's a great motion. I'd like to offer a couple of wordsmiths. First line, whereas Emergency Management BC does not currently instead of current.
I have to look and see what mine said. Some of it was rewritten.
And then in the second paragraph, life-threatening situation for persons rather than a person. Should be, yeah.
People?
No, persons works as well.
And I do see that it says UBMC instead of UMBC in the therefore clause.
UBCM.
Oh, it's UBCM. Oh, it's still wrong. Sorry. I was thinking of too many acronyms.
UMBC.
There we go. No, it should be UBCM.
Is it?
Don't listen to us and just write what you know.
Unity BC municipalities, yeah, UBCM.
Yeah, I think that takes
It's
care of most of it.
UBCM.
It's UBCM.
Just to clarify what we're doing here, we're just agreeing that this is a great motion to send through to Silga and that staff would wordsmith it and bring this one plus the other three, I think we agreed to or passed in a motion back to us for final approval. Would that be correct, CAO?
Thank you through the chair. This would have to be a little bit different because what you would have to have, instead of saying this is the proposed motion, you could approve it the way it is right now. But we could, what you probably want to do is, I'm taking a really long time to answer this question.
I think we should move the motion.
You can move the motion, but it's going to be that council forward the following resolution
Of course.
to Silga for their consideration.
Well, yeah.
To
Yeah, I
Silga.
think that is said basically in the therefore be it resolved at UBCM. So that would be
Yeah.
forwarded to UBCM.
No, we're sending it to Silga
To
first.
Silga, okay.
Yes. Because they support them and then they all go forward to UBCM for inclusion. They're a little stronger that way, they say.
Mayor Johansson?
Yes.
Well, yes, and you had the question about the other resolutions. I do have them drafted, and the intent was to bring them to the next meeting to meet the February 26th deadline for Silga for the resolutions. As well, with this resolution, we would not be able to use our emergency social services volunteers for this event. They're not qualified, and especially during COVID, they cannot activate under EMBC's rules right now as a gathering or a shelter.
Councillor Ventimiglia.
Thank you, Worship. I have a comment that I was going to make and then just a question based on the last comments. So the first comment I was going to make is that I think that this is a great motion and I look forward to the conversation and the debate at Silga. Like we've had a few conversations this evening and some of what we've talked about is how the current funding model is quite restrictive and doesn't necessarily meet our needs all the time or at this time. And so I look forward to the discussion and seeing if other communities are facing the same issues that we are and finding the current funding model restrictive. But just to clarify what was just said, what did you just say, Diane?
I said that the emergency social services, our volunteers, our support services volunteers we could use our equipment, but it would not be run by our volunteers. They're not trained to do that. They would have to be trained volunteers to manage a shelter of this nature.
Okay, but you didn't say that they could not gather at this
Yes,
time.
due to COVID, right now there is COVID restrictions, and we can, if we had to activate our EOC for an event, we would not be able to activate any kind of group lodging for residents. They would have to go to a hotel or to somebody's house.
Group lodging. Okay.
Yeah,
but
we would not be able to activate that.
The actual volunteers themselves, if there was like, I don't know, let's say a flash flood or something tomorrow, they could gather to do the work that they need to do. It's just the mass lodging we can't do at this point in time.
That's correct.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And that's it. I think that's a good point because those of us that are not involved in the running of EOCs and that sort of thing, like it wouldn't have occurred to me to make that a part of the conversation that volunteers need to be, obviously trained in activating a cold weather shelter. And that's an important point.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, and my assumption with this is that there would have to be some additional training for volunteers or a different group of volunteers who are trained to deal with people experiencing homelessness. It's a different skill set, which is understandable. But by the time this gets through Silga and then UBCM and then goes to the province, and I'm sure we've got a couple of years before there was any action on this anyways. Hopefully we're out of this COVID situation by then. And we can look at things like this. Thank you.
Okay, we have a mover and a seconder for the motion.
Oh, I'd like to move this, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought we already had it moved, but I will second.
Moved in second. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. I'll ask the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to correspondence, February 8th correspondence report. I'll pass this over to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the February 8th correspondence report, there's 2 items for your information only. One from the Liquor Cannabis Regulation Branch, just outlining a change in their processes for local governments regarding rural licensed retail store applications to communities that are too small to support a BC liquor store outlet. Local governments can continue to opt out in providing comments whereby the Liquor Cannabis Regulation Branch would have to take over that public input process. Additionally, a piece of correspondence from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure regarding upcoming changes to pilot car requirements on provincial highways. So the proposed motion is that the correspondence listed in item K2 and the weekly mail be received.
I'll move receipt.
Second.
Moved second. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to reports, the building permit activity report for January 2021. Any questions for the director? Seeing none, can I get a mover that the building permit activity report for January 2021 be received?
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Second. Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Fire department activity report for January 2021. Any questions for the CAO? Can I get a mover that the fire department activity report for January 2021 be received?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to councillor reports. Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Worship. Tuesday, January 26th and Monday, February 1st, I attended budget meetings with the rest of council. Thursday, January 28th, I attended a special closed meeting with the rest of council. And Tuesday, February 2nd, I attended a Oliver tourism meeting. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. The council meetings, January 26th, February 1st, and the special close January 28th, as outlined by Councillor Schwarzenberger. And that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Mattis. Councillor Grace.
Okay, good. You didn't hear all of that. January 26th and February 1st were budget deliberations. Wednesday, January 27th was a SILGA board meeting discussing our upcoming speaker series and our AGM. We've got some great speakers lined up, so hopefully Mayor and Council can check those out. The special closed meeting on January 28th. Friday, February 5th, I met with Kim English from the Community Foundation regarding some funding opportunities for Oliver. We had a good discussion about what's happening here. This morning was a 100 by 100 committee meeting. We had a look over logo submissions. We had some really awesome artistic contributions from local artists in the community. Students from the high school got involved, which was great. Like just looking at all of those pieces of artwork made me really happy. So that was wonderful, and those will be presented to the community at some point in today's meetings. And that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grace. Councillor Ventimiglia.
Thank you, Worship. So I have the budget meetings along with the rest of council on the 26th as well as February 1st. The special closed on January the 28th. and a primary care network steering committee meeting led by the Division of Family Practice. That was on January 3rd. And that today's meetings as well. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Councilor Gunther. Budget meetings on January 26th and February 1st, and a special closed on January 28th. I also had a meeting on January 28th led by divisions that included the medical and community foundations looking at fundraising for a primary care clinic in Oliver. Also attended on February 23rd, a meeting led by divisions, steering committee meeting, again, looking at establishing a primary care clinic in Oliver. And on February 4th, RDOS meeting. Upcoming meetings, February 22nd, 2021, regular open meeting, and February 23rd, 2021, special open budget deliberations on to complete our capital discussions. Acting mayor schedule for February is Councillor Schwarzenberger, and starting in March is Councillor Mattis. The next is public question period. If anybody in the public would like to ask a question about an item that was on the agenda this evening, please raise your hand. I do see one person of attending in public. I just ask one more time. Would you like to raise your hand and ask a question? I'll ask one more time. It looked like you were trying to turn your mic on. Are we good to move on, Diane? I'm just wondering that that person was able to get through.
Is that they're just, there's a chat.
They are okay.
They're okay. Okay.
They have
thank you.
no
I
questions.
appreciate the
Chat says no, thank you.
Okay. Then I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved. Second, please.
Seconded.
Thank you. Call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? We are adjourned. Thank you, council.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Have a nice